in imaging, how it can be useful, especially when identifying the leaflet segment, again, identifying the lesions affecting the specific leaflet segments, and also the mitral valve end phase view for mitral valve relations, morphology, function, and lesion detection. In this talk, I'm not going to talk about how to grade the severity of MR, MS, and all. Actually, basically, I'm concentrating on the mitral valve morphology, some of the anatomic relationships which may be helpful when we are imaging mitral valve during surgery. So, as we all know that the mitral valve is a very complex three-dimensional structure with these components. One is a fibrous skeleton of the heart, and the mitral annulus, mitral leaflet, chordae tendineae, papillary muscle, ventricular wall complex system. These are the structural components of the mitral valve apparatus, and for the normal functioning, a normal left atrial function is also very important. That also considered to be a part of the mitral valve apparatus. Now, as you talk about the fibrous skeleton, as you can see, this is a very important structure situated in the base of the heart, which actually holds all the four valves together. Now you can see that mitral valve is closely related to the aortic valve, and it is firmly held together anteriorly. This fibrous ring of the mitral valve is very firm and tough structure, and this is attached with the aortic valve. Posteriorly, you can see the fibrous ring is very thin and more of a fibromuscular and loosely attached. And you can see at the anterior annulus, it is usually bounded by two trigons. This is part is a right trigon, and this one is a left trigon. They are the topmost portion of the fibrous skeleton, almost like a cartilage. And in the right trigon is the importance of that, it is very closely related to the AV nodal tissue. So you can see the posterior annulus is very thin, and this is an area where posterior annulus is more prone for dilatation during disease process. Now, coming to the anatomic relationship, again, the understanding of these relations is very important. You can see that the AML and aortic valve shares a common fibrous tissue. This we call it as a interannular or intervalvular fibrosa. Anteriorly, this aortomitral curtain, we commonly call as aortomitral curtain, is closely related to the non-coronary cusp of the aortic valve and left coronary cusp and anterior mitral leaflet of the mitral valve. So this is what I was talking about the trigons. This is a right trigon. Here it is very closely related to the AV nodal and bundle of his tissue. And on the left trigon, on the other side, and laterally, the mitral annulus is closely related to the left circumflex artery. Posteriorly, the coronary sinus, which is draining to the right atrium. So these are the anatomical relationship of the mitral valve. And mitral annulus is a non-planar structure. It is actually a Shadilin state, and it has got, that means it has got a high points and low points, which we're going to see shortly. Now, a little bit about the mitral annular dynamism. So this is again an important aspect. The motion of the mitral annulus is entirely passive. It depends upon the contraction and relaxation of the adjacent left atrium, left ventricular musculature, as well as also contributed by the aortic root motion, especially aortic root starts expanding during early systolic. So this can cause the three types of motion of the mitral annulus. One is a translational motion, that in this the annulus moves towards and away from the LV apex during systole and diastole. Then other one is a circumferential contraction, and third one is a very important motion is a folding motion of the mitral annulus. So this is how we depict the annular translational motion. I just put a M mode across the lateral annulus. You can see during the contraction or relaxation of ventricular systole and diastole, the annulus actually moves towards the LV apex and away from the LV apex. So this is the motion. So if you look at the events happening, this is actually the end of the ventricular contraction. This is just before the atrial contraction, the mitral annulus in this position. Then the atrial contraction, the mitral annulus move away from the LV apex towards the direction of the LA. Then ventricular systole starts. It starts moving down towards the LV apex. So before atrial contraction, during atrial contraction, after atrial relaxation, ventricular contraction, and ventricular relaxation. So this is how the annular translation, annular movements happens. Now the third type of motion is circumferential contraction or annular sphincteric type of contraction. It's again is a very important function of the mitral annulus. Especially it plays an important role in the leaflet coaptation. This motion is due to the contraction of the helical fibers and the LV base. So what happens, there will be inward motion of the mitral annulus during the contraction systole, and that actually draws all the leaflets together, forming a tight seal at the coaptation line. Actually, this increases the coaptation height to almost 10 millimeter. Okay. So it helps in the coaptation of mitral leaflets during when the ventricular intraventricular pressure rises. And coming to the third type of motion is a folding motion of the mitral annulus. As I told earlier, the anterior annulus is firmly fixed, whereas the posterior annulus is loosely attached. So during the ventricular contraction, as the annulus moves downwards towards the LV apex, there can be a disproportionate movement at the anterior annulus compared to the posterior annulus because this is firmly fixed. So in order to compensate that, actually the mitral annulus fold its own axis. So that causes a deepening of the saddle shape of the mitral annulus. So it actually folds across its intercommissure axis. So this between the two commisses, and this axis is actually the anteroposterior axis. This is the intrapeak span here, and this is the valley of the mitral annulus or mitral valve that goes through the intercommissure axis. So this folding motion is a very important function of the mitral annulus, providing better coaptation, improved coaptation between the two leaflets. And during the systole, as I told, there will be a slight aortic root expansion that actually causes some movement of the anterior annulus towards posteriorly during the aortic root expansion. So again, that actually improves the coaptation between the two leaflets. So mitral annular dynamism is very important in mitral maintaining the integrity of valve competence, and also it significantly reduces the leaflet stress during systole. So I just wanted to show you here. Actually, I told that this is the high axis, and this one is a lower axis of the mitral valve. That the difference between these two axes is actually the annular height. So this annular height to the intercommissural diameter ratio, that is a very important, has a very important relationship with the leaflet stress. So during systole, normally the annular height increases because of the annular folding mechanism, deepening of the saddle occur. So normally it is around 0.2 or 20%. It actually increases. So that maintain the leaflet stress to be least during systole. But when any annular remodeling happens, especially when ventricular dilatation occurs in pathological states, either because of MR or ischemic MR or dilated cardiomyopathy, the annular remodeling occurs. The annulus becomes flattened. It loses its saddling. then the ratio goes below 20% or 0.2, then the leaflet stress can exponentially increases. When it reaches 15% or less, the leaflet stress is so severe that caudal rupture starts. So the saddle height is very important function of the mitral annulus in reducing the leaflet stress during systole. Now, there are certain important dimensions we will look when we assess the mitral valve using echocardiography. One dimension is the anteroposterior dimension, as I told you, the high axis, and other one is the intercommissural axis, and third one is the intertrigonal distance. These are the three things which we will look in a mitral examination. So what is meant by the high axis? We can see here the mitral annulus, as I told, is a saddle shape. It is more closely resembles the Pringles potato chip. So it has got the very short axis. This is the short axis of that mitral annulus, which we usually see in the mid-esophageal long axis view. So long axis view, this is the AP diameter. This is actually the short axis of the mitral valve, but we call it as a high axis or AP axis, anteroposterior axis. So this dimension is an important parameter in assessing whether any annular remodeling is happened or annular dilatation is there or not. Normally, an AP diameter is less than or equal to 36 millimeter in an adult population. This is measured in end systolic, or usually it is less than 16 millimeter per meter square. That is an indexed AP diameter. So again, this is an important view as well as important axis, and this in this view, the measuring in this axis imaging is important for defining whether any leaflet has got a prolapse or a billowing, or almost all important measurements are done in this view. So,
Attendees, please keep the mics off. Attendees, kindly please keep the mics off. Keep the mics muted. Thank you.
now coming to the low axis, that is actually the intercommissure axis. That axis goes through between the two commissures, and its dimension is also a very important parameter in assessing the remodeling of the mitral annulus. Normally, it is usually less than 46 millimeter or equal to 46 millimeter end systole. All these measurements are done in the end systole. Now, the intertrigonal distance. Again, this is a dimension we usually look especially in mitral valve repair surgeries. This may give a rough an idea that what size ring is selected for that particular patient. But the 2D has some limitation because the intertrigonal distance cannot be directly measured by 2D imaging. So it is usually derived by using this formula, this aortic annulus dimension divided by 0.8 is roughly corresponds to the intertrigonal dimension. So these are the few measurements we will were important, especially when mitral evaluation is done. Then coming to the leaflets and annular circumference. So we know that there are two two leaflets, anterior mitral leaflet and posterior mitral leaflet. You can see the anterior mitral leaflet actually attached to the anterior annulus, or 1/3 of the mitral annulus it occupies, whereas the posterior mitral leaflets occupies 2/3 of the circumference. The total area of the surface area of the both leaflets is actually twice than that of the mitral annular area. So there are a lot of leaflet tissue is available for providing coaptation. So this is one safety mechanism. for this mitral valve. Now you can see that there are two scallops or indentation present in the posterior mitral leaflet that divides the PML into three segments. So segments which is very close to the anterolateral commissure. This is the anterolateral commissure, and this is a posteromedial commissure. Anterolateral commissure, that is P1 segment. Middle is a P2 segment, and the segment close to the posterior mitral commissure is the P3 segment. There are no indentation on the AML. It's a smooth surface, but the opposing areas corresponding to the PML segments, we label it as A1, A2, and A3 segments. So something about the line of coaptation. Again, this line of coaptation of the mitral valve that extends from anterolateral commissure to the posteromedial commissure. So it is a C-shaped curve. Again, that is important for the better coaptation between these two leaflets. So it looks like a smiley of the mitral valve. Very commonly use this term. So and during mitral valve repair surgery, you can see that after the repair, the surgeon tried to restore the smiley back for the proper coaptation. Now, coming to the leaflet height, again, another variable we will measure. The leaflet size. Anterior mitral leaflet is a bigger or a longer leaflet than the posterior mitral leaflet. It's almost twice than that of the posterior mitral leaflet. And the motion of the anterior mitral leaflet is very, very important, because as you can see that this anterior mitral leaflet, it actually shares the common boundary of the LV inflow tract and LV outflow tract. So anterior mitral leaflet and its motion is very important for the especially again in the mitral repair surgery. Even though PML is shorter, it has the same surface area as I told, because it has got a bigger attachment. On almost 2/3 of the circumference is by the PML. So both has got almost a similar surface area. Now the chords and papillary muscle, again, these are important components for the proper functioning of the mitral valve. One thing is that the papillary muscle displacement that can occur in certain disease conditions like secondary, it can cause secondary mitral regurgitation, especially in dilated cardiomyopathy or ischemic cardiomyopathy. Actually, what happened, the papillary muscles may displace from the axial position. So, and in coronary disease, the posterior papillary muscles are more prone to have the dysfunction because it receives single coronary supply. Now, coming to the segmental nomenclature, we commonly use the Carpentier nomenclature. This is the American Society of Echocardiography recommendation. And this is the most popular one because of its simplicity. Here, he describes leaflets only. According to the leaflet segments, the nomenclature is classified. Very, 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 this is important for easy communication to the operating surgeon. So as I told, it has got a 6 segments, P1, P2, P3, depending upon the indentation of PML, and corresponding to the AML, there are A1, A2, A3 from anterolateral commissure to the posteromedial commissure. There is another nomenclature is described by the Duran. Here, actually, the Duran actually addresses the cords and papillary muscle connections from these leaflets. So, the nomenclature actually he divides the mitral valve apparatus into anterior half and the posterior half. The segments or the leaflets, the part where the cords are coming from the anterior half of the mitral valve goes into the lateral papillary muscle, whereas in the posterior half, it goes to the posteromedial papillary muscle. So there are some significant difference from the Carpentier classification. Here, the AML has 2 segments. So those part of the leaflets, which is anterior to the midline, they are given a same number, that is 1. So we have got a A1, C1, P1, and posteromedial segment is divided into anterior half and posterior half. Anterior half is given as a PM1 segment. So this all components of the leaflets that give rise to cords that goes to the anterolateral papillary muscle, and this posterior to this midline, all those components gives rise to cords that goes to posteromedial papillary muscle. So this arrangement is very important. You cannot transfer one of the cords from the posterior leaflet component into the anterior compartment. It can actually distort the mitral valve and cause a significant MR. So the previously surgeons used to do caudal transfer. So this classification, this is very, very important. Nowadays, mitral valve repair, most of the surgeons will do neocaudal placement. So they go by the same principle. So one of the drawback of the Carpentier classification, it just addresses on the leaflet. It won't addresses of the subvalvular connections and anatomy. Now, there is a major difference between the surgical orientation of the mitral valve and the echocardiographic orientation of the mitral valve. So very important to understand this thing. Okay, so surgeon view the mitral valve from left atrium, looking down through the LV. Here, the patient's left and patient's right sides corresponds to the surgeon's left and right side, respectively. And the anterior mitral leaflet and posterior mitral leaflet appear in the appropriate position. And the lateral and medial half aspect of the mitral valve are to the left and right of the surgeon. This is how the surgical orientation of mitral valve is there. Now, when we do the TE, the orientation is very different. It is actually reverse rotated through a 180 degree. So this is when the surgeon looks at the mitral valve is a kind of a smiley face. But when we in the 2D T orientation, it is kind of a frowning face. Okay, so this is the difference in orientation. Now, one of the important aspects of mitral valve examination is how you have to locate the mitral valve segments very correctly. So then only we can tell which segments is affected. So for that, a systematic 2D examination or approach is essential. There are different methods are used, but what we commonly follow is a Lambert's systematic multiplane T views for segmental analysis. The key is to obtain multiple views of the mitral valve, because we need to have a mental reconstruction of the mitral valve apparatus when we use 2D. So try to take as many views of mitral valve as possible and try to centralize mitral valve for imaging and identify each mitral valve segment using anatomical landmarks. The landmarks I told about the aortic valve, relationship aortic valve, left atrial appendage, and coronary sinus. These are the useful landmarks which can help in identifying the leaflet segment. So if you look at, there are 8 T views are used for the mitral valve examination, 5 in the midesophageal position and 3 in the transgastric position. So we all familiar with these views: 4-chamber, 5-chamber, commixtural view, 2-chamber view, and long axis view in the midesophageal, and basal short axis, transgastric 2-chamber, and deep transgastric long axis view in the transgastric position. So at 0 degrees, 3 probe positions, at the 3 probe levels, you can get all these 3 views. So from the classical 4-chamber view, if you withdraw the probe, you will get, or anti-flex the probe, you will get a 5-chamber. And if you advance the probe from the 4, you will get a deep or low 4-chamber view. So the important thing we should understand that the interrogating plane is actually cutting the mitral valve in 0 degree tangentially. This is one of the limitation of 0 degree, especially when identifying the segments. So 4-chamber view, this is the interrogating plane. It cuts obliquely the mitral valve, and you will be able to see the part of the A3 segment, A2 segment, and P2 and some portion of the P1. It is so when you have a T image, so some portion of the A3 segment, A2 segments you will be seeing on the AML, and A2 can always coapt with the P2, so there will be the coaptation zone is A2 P2, but you may find some part of the P1, as I told, because this is an oblique imaging. So it is not a useful image for doing any kind of measurements. So you will not get the true leaflet height. If you want to measure the A2 height, this may not be corresponding. So this is not a view we will use for segment height and determination. Again, and if you look at the annulus measurement, annular diameter also, we will not use this one. Again, it's because of this oblique nature of the image. Now, from this four-chamber view, if you withdraw the probe, you will be getting the alveoli and aortic valve, and the interrogating plane moves more anteriorly. You will be seeing the A1 and P1 segment coaptation. You can clearly see there is a coaptation defect due to P1 prolapse. So again, some articles have shown this view can be used for measuring the A1 height or P1 height, but generally, because of the tangential cutting interrogating plane, this is again, it's not a good view for leaflet height measurement. Now, from four-chamber view, if you push the probe a little bit or advance the probe a little bit, you may see the coronary sinus, which is most posterior structure. So we are here, you can see the imaging plane moved posteriorly. So you will be seeing the A3P3 coaptation in this view. Now, next important view is the 60-degree mid-esophageal commisural view, where the interrogating plane cuts through the across the two commissures, anterolateral and posteromedial commissure, and you will see three segments, two segments from the PML, that is P1 and P3, and middle you will get a A2 segment. This is a very, very reliable image of the mitral valve. If you have a 60-degree and these segments are seen, it is almost sure that this is a P1 segment, this is a P3 segment, and this is a A2 segment. So there is a good reliability is there in identification of the segment. Again, this is a very good image for measuring the P3 height as well as P1 height. So it's a good view to assess it. And you can have the origin of the MRZ, whether it is close to the anterolateral commissure. This is an anterolateral commissure, this is a posteromedial commissure. So we get an idea about where exactly the MRZ is originating. Now, here, this is a classic view that normally you will not see a P2 segment in the commisural view, but this is a pathological state where the P2 is prolapsing over the A2, looking like a cobra head, the classical cobra head appearance. So again, this is a very important view for the mitral valve, two-chamber mid-esophageal 90-degree view. Again, we know that I have already told 0-degree cuts the mitral valve tangentially. This plane is perpendicular to that, orthogonal to that plane. So definitely this is also cutting the mitral valve tangentially. Not a good view for leaflet measurement, annular dimension measurement. But what the segments you will be able to see is all the three segments of AML and A3 is coapting with the P3. So this again, there is a lot of uncertainty exists using this image. Unless you don't have a probe in your hand, it is very, very difficult to say that what all these segments are there. If it is in the neutral position, we can show that the A3 is coapting with the P3 segment, and you can see the part of the A2 and A1 in two-chamber view. Not a very good view for measurements or for either leaflet measurement or annular measurement. You can see the relationship, P3, the coronary sinus, A1, the left atrial appendage. Now, the most important view for the mitral valve examination, especially for measurement, is a mid-esophageal long axis view. Usually we'll obtain at 120 to 140 degrees. So here, the interrogating plane transect the mitral, not only the mitral valve, also in the aortic valve in the middle. So you can get the A2 and P2 segments very clearly, and the coapting zone is between A2 and P2. This is the best view to assess the annular dimension. As I told, the high axis goes through this in this view, long axis view. So this will correspond to the anteroposterior diameter. So you can assess that whether there is any annular dilatation is there or not. You can assess the P2 height, A2 height, and all sort of other measurement. The common thing is the annular dimension, as I told. Norm, if it dilatation means is more than 36 millimeter or more than 16 millimeter per meter square indexed diameter. Or if you can look at the annulus diameter divided by the AML height, if the ratio is more than 1.3, we can assume that this annulus is remodeled or dilated. The important other measurements are AML height, especially the A2 segment. It gives some rough idea that what should be the ring size need to be for the repair cases. And PML, the P2 height, especially this is important to look in the P2 prolapse where there is associated with any redundancy of the P2 is there or not. If the height is too long, more than 15 millimeter, say about 19 or more, then the repair involves resection of the PML also. We have to reduce the PML height so that the systolic anterior motion of the mitral valve can be SAM can be prevented. Then again, I told for defining prolapse, billowing, this is the best view because this is a high axis. Any leaflet portion going above that can be defined as a prolapse of the loin. And this view is also important for assessing the tenting height, tenting area, especially in a secondary MR cases. Again, this is a view used. Another important parameter is C-sep distance, that is the coarctation point to the nearest septum distance, which can be used as a predictor for SAM. If the C-septa distance is less than 25 millimeter, there is a potential for SAM development, especially in a mitral repair surgeries. So again, the long axis view is very, very important in assessing. This is a case where the P2 flail is there. You can see clearly the P2 segment is going above the annular plane, and you can see the redundancy of the valve. So you can measure the P2 height. If it is more than 15 floppy segment, then surgeon may need to reduce the P2 height during the repair. In this case, there is definitely the AML A2 segment, a caudal rupture is there. You can see that the direction of the jet hitting on the left atrium, and it is climbing. The conda effect you can see. Surgeons may look for the jet lesions here because they can see the jet lesions on the left atrium. That may give an idea about the surgically where exactly the MR jet is hitting. So again, this imaging is very important. Plane is very important for the mitral valve caudal rupture assessment. Now coming to the transgastric views, 3 views, basal short axis view. This view is important because all the 6 segments of the mitral valve can be assessed, visualized in a single imaging plane. This is the only imaging plane that provides all 6 segments, and both commissures in the same plane, and typically gives a fish mouth appearance. And you can see here the origin of the MR jet can also be assessed. This is a case with the P2 prolapse. You can see the MR jet is originating in the middle. So basal short axis view gives an idea about the jet, as well as some of the congenital abnormalities like presence of cleft, perforation, or as in this case, a double orifice mitral valve, which is very, very difficult to visualize in other imaging 2D imaging planes. So here, this short axis can delineate. This is actually is a secondary or the mitral orifice. This is a main orifice. So sometimes you will be see incidentally. Now, next transcasting image is a transcastic 2-chamber view. This is basically from the transcast mid-papillary view. If you forward rotate the angle to 90 to 100 degree, you will get the 2-chamber view. This view is very useful for assessing the subvalvular anatomy, especially the caudal structures, papillary muscle. So this anterolateral papillary muscle, caudal structure. If you want to assess the caudal length. This is one of the good view to assess. In this case, you can clearly see there is a AML flail with a vegetation, and you can look for the integrity of the caudal subvalvular apparatus in such cases. Now, in case of rheumatic mitral, typical rheumatic mitral stenosis, a color Doppler is placed. You can see the inflow turbulent gradients, and it is very classical mitral stenosis where leaflet thickening is a leaflet restrictive motion, both systole and diastole, narrow orifice, calcification. So typical MS, we use a color, the continuous wave Doppler. You're getting 18 peak gradient of 18, mean gradient of 9, indicating the severity of MS. But again, the transgastric two-chamber view may provide some more additional information about whether there is an association of secondary MS is there or not. If you closely watch, this is a leaflet cusp separation, and there is a turbulence, and the turbulence is actually extending at the region somewhat towards LV apex at the caudal region. So there is actually a caudal fusion is happening. So there is not only the valvular or commissural fusion, but there is some significance of valvular pathology is there. So the 2D, the two-chamber view is very important. Now the same patient we use a pulse wave Doppler to specifically measure the gradient at the leaflet tip. The gradient is much lower, but as we move the sample volume more down in the subvalvular region, the actual gradient is appearing at the subvalvular level. So the transgastric two-chamber view may give an idea about the subvalvular pathology. Now coming to the last view, the deep transgastric long axis view, again a very important view for mitral valve function assessment, especially if the patient has got any aortic pathology or has got an aortic processes. Midesophageal views may not be very good view because of the lot of acoustic shadowing from the calcification, either from the mitral annular calcification or aortic annulus, or from the processes that can actually interfere with the imaging of the leaflet. So we just change the imaging plane into transgastric, deep transgastric. We will keep in such a way that all those structures are placed more distally, so we can clearly assess the leaflet motion and the subvalvular apparatus. So this is an important view for the type, assess the leaflet motion, whether it's a type 1, type 2, type 3, and what is the subvalvular kinetics also can be assessed. Again, this view is very important, especially after mitral repair after phase, where you want to look for the leaflet motion, whether it has come back to the type 1 motion after the repair. How is the coaptation between the two leaflet? You can actually measure the coaptation depth, whether adequate coaptation is provided or not. That actually indicate the durability of the repair, and the subvalvular structures we can assess. And here you can see the mitral annular ring, which is placed at the distal to the, you can see in distal to the leaflet, so it will not give any interference of the leaflet imaging. So that concludes the 2D imaging for the mitral valve segmental analysis. In a nutshell, there are 8 views are there, but the most reliable view, I feel, it is bicommissural view, long axis view, and basal short axis view, because the segment, there is no much uncertainty about the segment delineation. So almost all in a mitral examination, these 3 views should be included always to look for the segments. And you can see the high points, low points, other structures we have already described. Now coming to the 3D imaging, I would like to give some important stress to the this unique 3D modality, the simultaneous biplane imaging of mitral valve. So here, actually, this left-hand side is the primary or the reference image, and it has got a unique feature that the secondary imaging plane can be placed at any area, any level you want. So here, through a 180 degree range. So here, the secondary imaging plane I have placed onto the P1 segment. So this is a bicommissural view. This is a P1 segment. So we will get the secondary image with the P1 and A1 coaptation. So It's very easy, and it is more very precise in assessing the coaptation zone. Especially other images takes more time. You need to you have to be very careful about the probe position, probe rotation, and also here just 60-degree placing the imaging plane. Now at the middle it goes to the A2. Oh, in the secondary image you are getting the A2P2 coaptation. You can see crystal clearly analyze, is there any leaflet dysfunction is there between these two coaptations. So again, I changed the imaging plane to the P3. Now the coaptation zone is A3P3. So it is a very easy method and unique method of assessing the coaptation between all the 6 segments of the mitral valve. Again, you can place a color flow Doppler to look for where exactly the MR jet is originating. Again, where it's exactly the coaptation problem is. So when you have a 3D facility in your machine, this modality help in identifying the segments, leaflet dysfunction, origin of the mitral regurgitation much easier compared to the all other the sequential imaging of the 2D. Now coming to the 3D imaging, the end phase views, which is a very important view we use for the mitral valve surgery, especially the mitral repair surgery. It is a very important view. As I told, the orientation, this is a surgeon's perspective. Mitral valve smiles at the surgeon, whereas it frowns at the anesthesiologist when used 2D. But this can be circumvented by using the 3D data sets, which can be rotated, and we can create almost similar like a surgeon's view. So you can use either a zoom, 3D zoom, or a full volume data for creating this end phase view. You look at the anatomical relationships. So normally in the surgeon's view, the aortic valve position, valve is placed 12 o'clock position. Now on the left and lateral anteriorly, you will have a left atrial appendage, and this is a pulmonary vein joining to the LA. And on the posteriorly, you can see the coronary sinus draining to the right atrium. This is the tricuspid valve septal leaflet. This is the area where the triangle of Cox, where that AV nodal tissue is situated. This is the area where the right trigone is there. This is the left trigone, non-coronary cusp, and the left coronary cusp. This is all anatomical relationship of the mitral can be visualized clearly. You can clearly see the anterior mitral leaflet, both commissures on all the segments. These two scallops and the P1, P2, and P3 segments can be clearly seen. So it is a very, this is how the surgeons look into the mitral valve after opening the left atrium. This is, again, you can rotate and look at the mitral valve relation, non-coronary cusp and left coronary cusp here. The appendage is on the lateral side. Now, this is clearly seen the coronary sinus draining running posterior to the mitral annulus, draining into the right atrium, and the relationship with the AV node. And this we have already discussed. On the laterally, there you can see the left circumflex running close to the mitral annulus. So again, this is very important to know that circumflex, whether it is close to the annulus, especially in mitral valve repair surgeries. So it's good to have an idea about the coronary dominance. There is some safety margin with the right dominant system, where the circumflex is actually slightly far away compared to the left dominant system. Right dominant, it is somewhat around 8 millimeter from the annulus, whereas the left dominant circumflex runs very close to the annulus by 4 millimeter. So if we have an idea about the coronary dominance, that can convey to the surgeons. So sometimes during the annuloplasty suture, this vessel can get injured. So we have to have an idea about how is the lateral wall motion prior to the surgery, any change, any new region of wall motion abnormality has developed in this area or not. That's very important in the mitral valve repair assessment. Now, another easy way to communicate is you can use the polar coordinate system of the clock to see where exactly any other lesion is there. Suppose you have a deep cleft at this 8 o'clock position, you can tell that 8 o'clock position the cleft is too deep. You may have to close. That is one area where the MR may be originating. So you can use the polar coordinate system. Clock system can be so better way to communicate. 3D imaging modality allows to do some measurements, direct measurements, an AP diameter you can assess, an intertrigonal distance, which we use in our institute very commonly for measuring the intertrigonal distance for ring size selection. It actually closely, it is better indexed than the 2D derived intertrigonal distance or AML height. This one is usually corresponds with what the surgical direct measurement of the intertrigonal distance. So help in ring size selection. Now, this 3D data set can be rotated and can look from the LV and phase V. Sorry.
How much more time? It's.
I think almost getting over. Almost getting over. May I continue?
Yeah, finished.
Okay. So here, this image actually LV and phase V from the LV side, you can see the subvalvular kinetics, the development of SAM, all those things where exactly it is dragging, that can be assessed very clearly. Now, P2 flail segment, very easily you can identify the lesions, where exactly the other components like caudal rupture, all those things can be assessed in the surgeon's view. And 3D actually improves the accuracy of detecting multiple lesions, especially when multi-segment involvement, as in this case, the Barlow's disease, which all segments are affected, either bileaflets segment is affected or not. Again, this is another condition where the 3D has superiority over 2D, especially when you have a bileaflet involvement with prolapse as well as commissure prolapse, which may be missed in the routine 2D examination. 3D has definite advantage. And picking up additional lesions, here there is classical AML A2 flail segment is there, but along with that, if you closely watch the P2 area, there is a micro cleft, which can be, this is a still image, you can see there is a cleft. So if you miss that thing during the repair, that can cause a residual MRJ. So 3D can help in identifying additional lesions in such situation. And again, 3D also offers study of the mitral annular dynamism. I have given much stress to the annular dynamism in the initial phase. So now more and more flexible and incomplete rings are being placed. So classical mitral repair, the French correction, where the resective repair with the rigid ring was placed. Now more American correction, where non-resective repair with the placement of the flexible rings. This is to preserve the annular dynamism, is being an area of interest. You can clearly, the 3D echocardiography is an important tool for understanding or studying the annular dynamism. So in summary, 2D mitral valve assessment needs a mental reconstruction of several views of mitral valve for interpretation. For that, a systematic 3D imaging approach is essential for sequential segmental analysis. 3D imaging reproduce surgeon's view. That is a very, very important advantage, big advantage. It improves the visualization and accuracy of multiple lesion picking detection. It also improves the real-time mitral valve apparatus function. Thank you.
Thank you, Unikrishnan, for that very in detail description of the mitral valve assessment. I understand that even 1 hour is very much minimal for to make every aspect clear. So it was a very nice presentation. And can you hear me, Paula?
Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Rajiv, chat box, are there any questions?
Sir, as of now, I have checked. As of now, there is no questions, sir, in the chat box, sir.
Okay. Dr. Prabhu Shankar has something to tell. Sir, you have to unmute yourself.
Good morning, sir.
Morning.
Good morning to Dr. Unni Krishna.
Good morning.
I thank you for enlightening us the entire aspects of the mitral apparatus about the various segments and its for the correction. I thanks on the behalf of the Karnataka IACTA chapter. Why Durance? This one is not popular, sir. Classification one.
It is simply because it is not very simple to in Durance classification some difference is there. Actually the Durance actually believes that the commissures has got a separate commissure leaflet because it has got a separate fan shaped cords to the papillary muscle. So and it is little bit complex compared to the Carpentier classification. So Carpentier is very popular because of simplicity.
And
but
other
thing is, previously we are not using the caudal transfer. We are placing neocaudal placement. So generally the anterior part of the usually we'll use the caudal neocaudal placement, especially the anterior mitral leaflet pathology where resective repair is not recommended. Popularly, as far as possible, the mitral valve should be anterior mitral leaflet should be preserved. So especially when the surgeon places a neocord, it has to, if it is the anterior half, it has to go to the anterolateral papillary muscle. That orientation has to be done.
What all the other question is, what all the guidelines for functional MR, sir? Or when to address?
Yeah, current. Yes. Functional MR, especially I think you are talking about the chronic ischemic MR. Chronic ischemic MR. Is that correct?
Just generally.
Yeah.
One, two is especially in ischemic MR, especially Carpenter's one classification, Carpenter 1 or 3. We have a dilemma during suppose if mild to moderate MR. Some we think that just revascularization is enough.
Yeah, exactly.
So some some they address with the repair and sometimes replacement of the valve also.
Yeah, so current there are a lot of conflicts were there in managing the mitral repair surgeries in ischemic MR. Now the current recommendation, or most of the surgeons follow that in a severe ischemic MR, definitely mitral intervention is needed. So in that case, whether it's a repair versus replacement, now the trend is going towards a caudal sparing replacement. It's not the repair. It's a caudal sparing replacement because if you look at the survival benefit, there is no advantage of repair versus replacement. But the rehospitalization, appearance of the symptom-wise, caudal sparing replacement has an advantage over mitral repair in severe MR. But there are certain specialized centers. Surgeons are proficient to do subvalvular intervention. So in ischemic MR, the repair is placing a restrictive annuloplasty ring. Beyond that, if the surgeon is capable to do a secondary caudal cutting or a papillary muscle interposition, such kind of subvalvular intervention, if the surgeon is proficient in selected group of patients, ischemic, the mitral repair is beneficial. Otherwise, caudal sparing mitral replacement is the trend now. For a moderate ischemic MR, currently, again, the NEJM, there is a series of studies has come up. The moderate ischemic MR, the complication rates with the repair is much higher compared to non-repair, only CABG alone. And mild MR, no question. There is only CABG is there. There is no need to intervene the mitral valve. Moderate is still a gray area, but the trends is showing that those patients who are undergone repair in moderate ischemic MR, they have much higher complication in terms of supraventricular arrhythmias. Neurological complications are much higher compared to non-repair subset. So general trend is only severe ischemic MR, there is intervention is required. Between repair and replacement, trend is going for a caudal sparing replacement in a very specialized center. Subvalvular intervention, the surgeons are proficient to do subvalvular intervention. In that study itself, there is a sub-analysis. Those groups, some of the groups, they benefited with the repair. Now, another advantage impression has come up that if the patient has got a localized remodeling, especially the inferior wall infarction, where you have got a basal aneurysm or basal dyskinesia, in those conditions where repair has shown much higher failure rate. Because what is happening in the repair, there is putting a restrictive annuloplasty ring. So as I told, the posterior annulus will move towards anteriorly when you place a smaller ring. So what happens? The PML, the tethering or the stress on the PML actually increases. Because annulus only moves, but the ventricle is dysfunction, papillary muscles are displaced laterally. So there is an increasing tethering occurs to the PML. So basal aneurysm or basal dyskinesia in the localized or inferior wall infarction repair is not a good not a choice at all. Okay, so there, if the MR is severe, we have to go for a caudal sparing replacement.
There's one question by Ayesha Goyal. What are the post-mitral repair? What all points, at least minimum things we should see by TE?
Yeah. So if you look at the goals of mitral repair, as Carpentier, who is the father of the mitral repair, he told that we have to achieve 3 golden rules. One is you have to correct the leaflet dysfunction. So you need to identify exactly where the leaflet dysfunction is there. And if it is a type 2, especially the type 2 dysfunction, you have to correct to type 1 leaflet motion. That's important. You may have to, the surgeon may have to resect the leaflet or non-resect depending upon the redundancy. Then you have to provide adequate coaptation surface. Again, it's very important for the durability of the repair that we will as I shown in the one view, where the coaptation depth between the AML and PML coaptation, ideally we should look for a 7 millimeter and above. Around 10 millimeter is a very good durable repair, and we need to stabilize the annulus using an annuloplasty ring. So these 3 things is primary points. So this is to prevent further dilatation. So you can use flexible on rigid ring. So where if the annular dynamism, if you want to preserve in some subset of patients, flexible ring surgeon may prefer. Otherwise, classical French correction by the Carpentier, he uses a rigid ring. So these parameters, so not more than mild MR or trivial MR is not acceptable in repair. That is one parameter we look for the post-repair MR assessment. Then any potential for SAM, any that need to be looked. If the patient develops a SAM, then you have to identify what is the mechanism causing the SAM. Whether it is if the surgeon has not reduced the leaflet to an optimum of 15 millimeter of the P2, any redundancy is there, then it can actually push the coaptation point more anteriorly and can cause SAMs. So whether any residual redundancy is there or not, or if the ring size selected is very small, then again it can cause a SAM potential. So looking at the SAM potential, the parameters is very, very important. Then the leaflet motion, whether it has come back to type 1 or not, it is coming up to the annular plane and coapting. That is an important thing. Then inflow gradients is another parameter we'll assess, and you have to rule out any circumflex injury, especially as I told, the circumflex is running close to the annulus, so it can get injured. So region of motion abnormality, and sometimes we have seen recently one case after coming off bypass after mitral repair surgery. Mitral valve was perfectly okay, no residual MR. Then all of a sudden, SAM is patient develops SAM and hemodynamic instability. So in that case, we have to closely evaluate what is the cause. Sometimes coronary air, which is a very common feature, it can go into the right coronary artery and causes RV dysfunction, where the ventricular septum can move towards the left side and cause SAM. So the SAM may be secondary to the RV dysfunction. So in that case, the management is totally different. You have to improve the RV contractility. You have to push the RCA air more distally using some pressors to improve the mean artery pressure, to improve the RV function so that the septum will move back to its normal position. Then SAM can be avoided. It may not be related to the repair, but it could RV dysfunction can also predispose. So ventricular function, both left ventricle and right ventricular region of motion abnormality, all comes in the assessment pathway.
Thank you for that. And I think there'll be much more. Any more questions, Rajiv?
No, sir, not yet, sir. Not any.
Thank you, Dr. Unnikrishnan, for that elaborate assessment of mitral. And I think participants will learn more regarding mitral stenosis and regurgitation in the next day meeting, the breakfast meeting at 9 o'clock. Santosh Ambli is going to speak on mitral stenosis and regurgitation. So thank you all for giving a great participation and listening to the lecture. Thank you, and we'll meet next Sunday morning at 9 a.m. again.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Unnikrishnan.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Nice day.
Thank you, Unnikrishnan sir and Keshavamurthy sir and the attendees. We'll meet on the next Sunday session. Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy Sunday.
Thank you. You too. Thank you.